Hello, church family. It's fantastic to be with you, and I'm here with a really great friend, actually, and the vicar of our fantastic St Michael's Church, Mr. Geoff Sowden. So, Geoff, we're going to do a bit of an interview. Do you want to say hello and start to share a little bit about you and how you came to faith and those sort of things?
Right. Well, good morning to our community church. For those of you that don't know me, I am the vicar of Highworth. And I've been here quite a long time, really. My journey of faith goes back to childhood. We were, as a family, taken to church. I went to for those days, a very large Anglican church, which was very very early into the renewal movement in the sort of early 60s, because I'm so old, you see. And they had an astonishing youth work, and at the age of 11 I went on a youth camp, and I remember sitting on the edge of a big cliff with the leader of my tent. In those days, you could have a leader in a tent with a group of boys. And he was following up various talks that were given. And it was at that point that I realized that being a Christian was not just something about going to church, but it was a personal relationship with Jesus. And it was that moment, and I always remember it. There was a ship going across the horizon because we were looking out to sea, and I remember the conversation, and every now and again looking out, watching this ship going across the horizon. Don't ask why I remember that, but there you go. And it was at that point that I came to faith, and I continued at that church for a number of years, and like many teenagers and young people in their own 20s, it was a story of commitment and a story of backsliding for all sorts of events. And I suppose it was late 20s that I realized that there was a possibility of me being called to full-time Christian service. Do I keep going, or do you want to ask me another question? Funny enough, it was through the same outfit that I came to faith when I was 11. I got involved in leadership, and I heard people preaching the Bible in a way that even in our big evangelical church I'd not heard, and it just blew me away. It was just, it made the Bible come alive. It was so applicatory and made me, well, I want to do this. And I was arrogant enough to think, oh, right, yes, I want to preach the Bible and to change people's lives and hearts through that. But I wasn't prepared at that point in time to go into full-time ministry for it. I quite like my job. I quite like my company car and all that kind of stuff. And
where were you working at the time?
I was working for the distribution business of Safeway stores. So I was responsible for all the distribution depots in the south of England. Some of them were third-party runs. Some of them were owned by Safeway. I quite liked that job. And I thought, well, I'm going to do this preaching business, but not become a vicar. And it was a 5-year debate with myself and with the Lord, and in the end, that's what happened. The story is amazing, actually, because in the very week that I went for my assessment centre with the Church of England, McKinsey, who are a large outfit of company doctors, were involved in Safeway, and I was needing to apply for my job again. And the interview was conducted over a couple of days, and the church interview was conducted over a couple of days. It was all in exactly the same week. I didn't want to tell either Safeway or the Church of England that I was under pressure from the other one. And, you know, I drove up and down the M1 because one interview was at one end of the M1 and the other interview was in London. And neither the church or Safeway knew about the other because the Lord had arranged for every single aspect of the interview to be on different days and different times. So there you go.
Brilliant. And so, those who don't know, what does it mean? So if you've got accepted to become a vicar, I mean, the people believe this is a call of God in your life. What's the sort of next steps? And then how did you end up in Highworth?
I did 2 years of vicar training at a college in Oxford. I then did an apprenticeship, we call it a curacy, for 5 years in Ware in Hertfordshire, W-A-R-E. People get very confused when I say Ware is where I did my curacy. And then I came here, and my calling has always ever only been for the local church.
How did you, sorry, quickly, how did you come to get connected into Highworth?
Oh, well, I'd had a number of conversations, interviews with various churches. And I remember I went for an interview in the Cotswolds, actually. And the guy doing the interview said, "You shouldn't be getting this job, mate. This is not for you." Oh, thanks a lot. At the beginning of the interview, he said this: "You need to apply for Highworth." And that's what I did. And so here I am. But my calling has only ever been for the local church. I was very influenced by Willow Creek and Bill Hybels in the early days of my ministry. And his great phrase, for many of you will know, is that the local church is the hope of the world. And that's what my vision has been and always has been, that Highworth churches would be the hope of our community, which is why, you know, the conversations that you and I have had, Matt, over the last years have been so great and so powerful, because, you know, that's clearly your hope in your ministry and your vision as well. And to have as Bill Hybels used to put it, as a biblically functioning community church, that's all I've ever wanted to do. And I'm chuffed a bit to have served, you know, the people of Highworth for the years that I have.
Brilliant. And just tell us a little bit about the sort of journey with St Michael's Church, sort of bring us to where we are today, because of course the whole issue to do with the refit, but actually was something not just physical but very spiritual, wasn't it?
Yes, I think for those of you who've been in Highworth longer than me, you'll know that in a place like Highworth, which is very traditional and very historical, the church has been at the centre of the community and is very important for very many people. And many of those people wouldn't go to church very often, but regard it as a huge part of their lives. And so, and they see change all around them, and somehow they see the church as not. They don't want the church to be part of that change. They want that to remain as it has, as they see it for centuries. And so, wanting to enable the church to be more up to date for worship and mission and serving our community and being around for 7 days a week and that sort of thing, getting people to accept and understand that change was a long process. And I said elsewhere that it's a 10-year process. And if you talk in other communities where churches have reordered and changed, it is a very difficult and long process, because it's grade one, you've got to get all the permissions right, all the architects have got to be happy and all that, but also it's a change of hearts and minds. Yeah. And there were, you know, people in the community, many people found it very hard to accept that change would take place. But the blessing has been, since we've done it, that I would say 95% of the people who've been welcomed into the building are blown away by its beauty and its restoration to what we believe is how the medieval designers designed it.
Yeah, and just quickly, because of course, like you say, we've all been in, and just fantastic where you brought it to. So good job and well done. But I know that, like as you've alluded to, correspondingly at the same time, there's been a real shift spiritually, and what that time, just share a little bit about, because of course you had to leave the building, which was quite a big deal, but actually proved, I think, spiritually and as a congregation, God did a lot of stuff. So just share quickly on that.
I think if you are the Anglican church in a community like Highworth, and you're the only Anglican church in a community like Highworth, there is an expectation and the opportunity to serve the whole community, whether that is for people who've been brought up in an inherited church, and also for those who are completely new to church. And being able to worship across multi-generations, being able to worship with those who had an inherited faith and those with a faith that has come to them later, is not an easy thing to do. If you're in Oxford or Bristol, or it is, there are loads of different churches that will offer different styles of worship and the way that they do church. And if you don't like what goes on at particular church, it's easy to walk 200 yards down the road to find it. But here we have been learning the maturity it takes to serve each other in seeking to serve the Lord. And that's been quite a difficult journey for us over the years. But I believe that, our vision and our purpose to serve the community, and by doing that, serving each other, we've come a long way. And I'm, very pleased to be serving St. Michael's people as we have walked that journey together. And increasingly in the last few years, we've shared it with the other churches here.
And finally, Geoff, just a bit, because of course we've been through a bit of an unusual time with lockdown and the whole crisis, and we know it's not over. What are some of your hopes as you look ahead in terms of what you've shared about as local church, and that been your hope and passion? What are some of your hopes looking ahead in terms of the church, but also for the community?
Well, I think I thought you were going to ask me about what I personally learned. I'll do, even though you haven't asked that question. What I personally learned is I'm a great planner. I'm a great looking forward person to what's coming up. And so I have set my heart and face to try and live day by day, which of course is a great biblical principle. And I'm very pleased that I at the moment, it's going okay. And I think that's part of my hope and expectation for many of us, that we would learn to appreciate what the Lord has provided for us today, and to not dwell on the past and not to look into the future, but just to, we've enjoyed the weather, we've enjoyed the fact that we can go for walking around our town. And we've also sort of possibly become much more focused locally. So our community is essentially being those that we are neighbours to. And so when we're talking about serving our community, as we have been as the church, I would hope and pray, as we all are serving our community, which effectively means those that we live very near to. As we come out on a Thursday night and we've clapped and waved with them and tried to find ways to serve them. And that would certainly be where I am in terms of the last few months.
Brilliant. Well, Geoff, thank you so much for taking a bit of time for us. Geoff's going to be sharing a word at church on a Sunday in a few weeks' time. And can I just big him up a bit? One of the things that really impressed me with Geoff, and I've learned from him, was when the sort of plans were put out about the refit in St. Michael's Church, and there was a lot of controversy and a lot of debate around it. And I love how Geoff made it about the gospel, and he said this building has existed for the gospel of Jesus Christ, and that's why we need to make the changes. And I learned so much in that. And I think there's a message for today where we've got things that, of course, in the news at the moment, racism is right up there, and the answer for that is the gospel of Jesus Christ. And let's make sure we don't get into the little individual bits and pieces of something, but continue to look, because that's the answer, and that's the hope we will. Bless you guys.